Hey, Mr. Morris here, and welcome to a video about the difference between micro and macro language analysis. When we study English, we're concerned with the choices a writer makes, the reasons they make these choices, their intention, and the impact on the reader, thoughts, feelings, and actions. English at GCSE, and sometimes at Key Stage 3, is split into two different subjects, language and literature. Some people struggle with telling the difference, but it's easy if you know what to look for. Firstly, if you're doing creative writing, you're doing language. However, both language and literature involve analysis. So, if you're studying poetry, it's literature. If you're studying a whole text, play, or novel, literature again. You might only analyse key scenes or extracts. But if the plot is important, or the development of the characters, it's literature. Language is based on unseen extracts. These will either be short, standalone pieces, such as letters or articles, or short sections of longer stories that you analyse on their own without knowing what happens before or after. The confusion occurs when it comes to analysis. These different subjects and the different aspects within these subjects lend themselves differently to different types of analysis. Knowing which to apply and when is a key skill, which can make all the difference on exam day. So let's start with microanalysis. Micro comes from the Greek meaning small. For example, microwaves are small enough to penetrate your food and cook it. Microanalysis is best for when you have the evidence in front of you. For example, in your language GCSE, you'll have a source or two sources that you need to read before you answer the questions, and you can keep in front of you whilst you answer them. And in literature, both anthology and unseen poetry, you get at least one poem in front of you that you can use to take evidence from. Microanalysis looks at the small and specific choices a writer makes with regards to language. This starts at the word level and includes the phrase level, sentence or line level, moving up to sections. Picking out individual words involves labelling them and splitting them and sorting them into types. You've got nouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs, pronouns, and more. Once you've picked out your individual words, you're usually going to look at the connotations that they have. Connotations are the thoughts and feelings that you have in response to certain words. For example, gold has connotations of wealth and rarity. If you pick out several single words, you might be able to make a semantic field, which is where a group of words share a common theme. Moving up to the phrase level, these are the bread and butter methods that people always look for. Metaphors, similes, personification, hyperbole, juxtaposition, oxymoron, emotive language. These are the things that people get stressed out that they can't use when they don't have the text in front of them. Sentence or line level looks at things like rhetorical questions or sentence types, simple, compound, or complex. Not all of these methods will be relevant all of the time, but when you have the text in front of you and you don't have to remember quotes, you can afford to be forensic. Dig deep and look at the smallest choices the writer makes. So what's macro analysis? Macro comes from the Greek for big or large. Macroscopic means you can see something with the naked eye, the opposite of microscopic. Macroanalysis is best for when you don't have a text in front of you, when you're forced to remember quotes, and you might only have a few committed to memory. Sir, I can't remember any quotes with similes in them. Or if you want to look at things on the whole text level. Macroanalysis looks at the large and wider choices a writer made. It's perfect for literature exams where you're studying a whole play or novel. Here are a few examples of some macro methods that you can look for. 1. Characterization and character arc. The way a writer creates a character and the journey that that character goes on and the changes they undergo is something that you can analyse when you're studying a whole play or novel in literature. If the quotes you can remember for a certain character don't have any similes, metaphors or personification in, they might still give you an insight into what that character's like or the changes they're undergoing. 2. Allusions. Not to be confused with illusions, allusions are when a writer makes a hint or reference to another piece of work. 3. Microcosm. Usually, when a story is set in one particular place, the messages contained within that story apply to a much bigger place, a whole country or even the whole world. The characters in a story can represent entire types of people. Writers usually use microcosm to teach us about the world because it's easier to see patterns and the consequences of actions on a smaller scale than it is in the highly complicated scale of the real world. 4. Irony. There are 3 types of irony. Dramatic irony, where the audience knows something that the characters don't. Semantic irony, where you say the opposite of what you mean. Lovely weather. And situational irony, which is the most complicated. Situational irony is where it seems like the universe is playing a trick on people or characters. there's usually dark humour involved, where something very unlikely happens in a way that seems almost poetic, or in a way that it seems like it could not have happened another way because it was so unlikely. An example would be if your character was trying to organise a fundraiser to help with a drought, but then that fundraiser was cancelled because of rain. That's bitterly ironic because it feels like God or the universe is conspiring against them. 5. Allegory. An allegory is where a writer teaches the audience a lesson through their words. Some stories are specifically allegories. For example, fables are allegories that use animals instead of humans to teach us a very simple lesson, like the tortoise and the hare. Other allegories are more complicated, and sometimes the message or moral is very subtle and has to be teased out from between the lines. 6. Plot structure. Sometimes the writer takes the plot in a direction that you weren't expecting. We call this a plot twist. Sometimes the writer chooses to start and finish the plot in the same place. That's a cyclical structure. Sometimes the plot moves chronologically from one time to another. That's called a linear structure. And sometimes this linear structure can be interrupted with flashbacks or flash forwards. 7. Motif. Sometimes the writer keeps referring to the same things here and there throughout the novel. You might even only need to remember a one-word quote, as long as that quote is dropped throughout the text again and again. Motifs don't even have to be the same word. As long as there is a type of repetition where something keeps appearing, the writer usually did that on purpose, which brings us on to 8. Symbolism. Sometimes objects aren't what they seem. A character might pick something up that seems unimportant, but that object that's in their hand might have a deeper symbolic meaning. Sometimes ordinary things can stand for something much more important. Keep your eye out for symbols, because usually they don't require long and intricate quotes. As long as you can remember the thing, you can refer to it. I hope this short guide helps with your micro and macro analysis. Remember, knowing how to do this alone won't guarantee you a good grade. You also need to be able to put it into writing. For specific guides for different questions, have a look at my other videos. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.